What's up, gamer? My name's Luco, and today I'm going to show you how to get through Act 8 of Path of Exile 1's campaign faster. As a quick disclaimer, this is not meant to be a super optimal guide for speedrunners to clear through the whole campaign in 2 hours flat. It's meant for beginner and intermediate players to share the tricks that I use and the paths that I take in each act to speed things up as someone who takes 5 to 7 hours on average to go from the beginning of the campaign to the end. When you leave Act 7, you emerge in Act 8 in a zone called the Sarn Ramparts, which is a 2-tiered zone that leads you to the Act 8 town. To get through the first tier from the entrance, depending on which side you spawn on, run to either the left or the right until you find a giant wall. When you reach it, just run alongside it until you find a hole in the wall and a set of stairs. Click on the stairs to go on top of the wall, then run back along the length of it in the exact opposite direction that you ran the first time. When you make it back to the opposite side of the zone on top of the wall, there should be a door to the Sarn Encampment somewhere on the top side of the path. When you get there, the next thing you should do is the second difficulty of the Lord's Labyrinth. Click on the waypoint and use the green pin with the little face on it to teleport to the Aspirant's Plaza. When you get there, run up the stairs, click on the Labyrinth activation device, click on the Cruel Labyrinth button, then click Activate at the bottom to open your lab. From there, do your best to beat Azaro all 3 times without dying and empower your Ascendancy class. When you finish the Labyrinth and go through the portal in the treasure room, it should put you right back in the Act 8 version of the Sarn Encampment. From the center of town, run down the path on the left that takes you past Clarissa and keep walking along the docks until you find the door to the Toxic Conduits. The first room in this zone has 2 exits on opposite sides. One of them leads directly to the exit and the other one leads you around to a couple of empty corners and then eventually connects back to the path that leads to the exit. Which side is correct and which side is correct but slower changes from layout to layout, so you basically just have to pick a direction and hope you get the right one. When you make your way onto the right path, just keep following whichever direction it leads until you find the door. From there, continue on to Doedre's Cesspool. This place is another maze of tunnels and sewer rooms like the last zone where you just have to explore until you find your way to the exit. The door to the next room can be on pretty much any side of the zone depending on how things generate, so I can't give specific directions on how to find it. When you find a semicircular room like this one with a platform and a loose grate in the middle, you're in the right place. Click on the grate to open it, then click on the door to the cauldron. This is where you fight your next boss, Doedre. To start the fight, click on the valve attached to the cauldron in the center of the room. Doedre will fly in, do a little animation, then start the fight. This boss is a little harder than some of the other mid-act bosses you faced in the past because her mechanics inflict stacking debuffs of a certain color as they hit you. She only does one color at a time, and which color she starts with is decided at random, but the red debuff makes you take more damage per stack, the green debuff makes you deal less damage per stack, and the purple debuff makes you slower per stack. If you start getting too many stacks of whichever debuff she's actively inflicting, click on the valve by the cauldron again and it'll force Doedre to do another animation where she flies over it and changes the color of the active debuff. Once you get used to managing those debuffs, she's not too tough to beat. After she's dead, click on the open tube on the top left side of the room to move on. The next room should have a waypoint and a crafting recipe near the entrance, as well as 2 exits on opposite sides of the room. The exit you want to take will always be on the right side of the room, and it will lead you to a zone called the Quay. From the start of this zone, it's very important that you run toward the bottom left until you find the edge of the water, and continue to run along that edge for the entire time you're navigating this part of the area. By following the edge of the water, you'll eventually find your way onto a skinny wooden bridge with stone arches on either end that leads to a little plateau with a sealed casket in the middle. Click on the casket and pick up the Ankh of Eternity that falls out, then go back over the bridge and keep following the edge of the water. After a while, that path will lead you to a room called the Resurrection Site. When you find it, go inside and talk to Clarissa. She'll say some stuff, then use the Ankh to start doing some ritual that spawns a bunch of zombies and enrages Tolman. Kill all the zombies, including Tolman, talk to Clarissa again, then go back out the door. From this point, you can stop following the water and instead run as far as you can towards the right side of the zone. This section varies pretty heavily from layout to layout, so sometimes you may be able to run directly from the Resurrection Site to the exit in a straight line, while other times you run into a wall or some water that forces you to run in a different direction. Whatever you run into, just keep looking for paths that let you run further to the right, and eventually you'll find the exit to the next zone, which is called the Grain Gate. When you first enter the zone, take a couple steps inside and grab the waypoint, then start checking all of the doors to the nearby buildings. The Grain Gate has a funny trick to navigating it where the correct doors are always marked by a dead body. This applies to every door in the zone, so if you want to take the fastest way through this place, do not go through any doors that don't have gore in front of them. If you follow the path marked by the bodies, you'll eventually find your way to a big group of unique enemies called the Gemling Legionnaires. They're the objective for an important side quest, so make sure to kill them all before you move on. After they're dead, look for more doors marked by more bodies until you find a big open gate. Go through it and click on the door on the other side to enter the Imperial Fields. This zone is very big and doesn't really have anything in it. Thankfully, the exit is always in roughly the same place, which is the top left side of the map. If you want to make real sure you don't get lost, there is a road you can follow most of the way, but it may or may not have some bad turns in it, so just make sure you keep going toward the top left. When you start seeing floors made of white and gold tiles, you're in the right area. Go a little farther, and you should find some stairs that lead up to the door of the Solaris Temple Level 1. Solaris Temple Level 1 is pretty linear, much like it was in Act 3. Just follow the path until you find a big room with a waypoint somewhere near the middle. Grab the waypoint, then from here, there should be 2 other exits that you haven't been through yet. Pick whichever one you feel like, and it will either lead you to a zone called the Solaris Concourse or the Solaris Temple Level 2. Solaris Temple Level 2 is really our goal in this zone, but if you happen to find the Solaris Concourse first instead, that's actually not a bad thing. Just go through the doors and run toward the bottom left side of the zone until you find another waypoint. This waypoint will always be on a slightly raised walkway somewhere on the bottom left side of the zone, so keep exploring until you find it. When you do find it, click on it and teleport back to the waypoint in the Solaris Temple Level 1. When you get back, go through the other path that you didn't take and it should lead you to the Solaris Temple Level 2. Whether you found the Solaris Concourse or not, now is the time to go down the stairs. Solaris Temple Level 2 is quite a bit larger than Level 1, but it's also pretty linear, so just explore whichever way the path leads you and eventually you'll find a glowing red portal at the top of a small set of stairs. Click on the portal to go through and fight a mini-boss named Dawn, the Harbinger of Solaris. When you kill it, it should drop a quest item called the Sun Orb. Collect the quest item, run to the top side of the room and collect the crafting recipe, then it's finally time to return to town for the first time since completing the labyrinth. When you get there, talk to Hargan to get a ring as a reward for killing Doedre, talk to Maramoa to get a skill point as a reward for killing the Gemling Legionnaires, then talk to Clarissa to get a skill point as a reward for killing Tolman. Once you're done with all that, go back to the waypoint in town, and if you found the Solaris Concourse first, go ahead and teleport there, but if you didn't, then teleport back to the Solaris Temple Level 1 waypoint, find the exit to the Solaris Concourse, and go through it. Like I said earlier, the waypoint in this zone will always be on a slightly raised walkway in the bottom left section of the zone, and the next door you need to go through will always be on the bottom left end of that slightly raised walkway. If you're starting from the door to Solaris Temple Level 1, make sure you grab the waypoint when you find the walkway, then, whether you started from the waypoint or the temple, run to the end of the walkway and go through the door to the Harbour Bridge. This zone is basically a very long alleyway that connects the Solaris side of Act 8 to the Lunaris side of Act 8. It's also the zone that contains the Act's final bosses, but unfortunately we can't fight them just yet. All you have to do here is run from the door of the Solaris Concourse all the way to the other end of the zone where you'll find the door to the Lunaris Concourse. When you get there, run directly to the top left until you find another waypoint. Walk up to activate it, then immediately turn and run toward the bottom left side of the zone until you find the door to the bathhouse. The bathhouse has 2 objectives. One is your next Ascendancy Trial, and the other is the door to a zone called the High Gardens. Both objectives always spawn somewhere on the top left wall of the zone, but it's very important that you do the Ascendancy Trial first. So from the entrance, run directly toward the top left side of the zone until you find the wall, then run along it and look for both the book icon that marks the start of the Ascendancy Trial and the door icon that marks the entrance to the High Gardens. You may also see an exclamation mark somewhere. That would be the objective for a different quest that does not have a worthwhile reward, so you can safely ignore it and Hector Titusius, the unique enemy that's guarding it. Like I said earlier, it's very important that you complete the area's Ascendancy Trial first. So find that, complete it, then continue running along the top left wall until you find or reach the door to the High Gardens, then go through. This zone is extremely linear, extremely long, and extremely dangerous. The main problem is the porcupines. There are always a ton of them in this zone, they spawn in big packs, and they all explode into a bunch of spikes when they die. If you're not careful, blowing up the whole pack of porcupines can easily chunk a lot of characters, which will send you back to the very start of the zone and force you to run through the entire thing all over again. If you're playing a build that destroys corpses, like a cold build that shatters most of the enemies it kills, then that will prevent the porcupines from exploding, so those builds are safe here. But any other builds need to be very careful not to kill too many porcupines at once. Follow the path until you find a room called the Pools of Terror, then go in to fight a boss named Yugul. There's not really too much to say about this boss. He has a big pounce attack that can hurt quite a bit. There are a couple phases where he disappears and summons a bunch of copies of himself, but probably the most annoying thing about him is that he summons bunches of these Quicksilver balls that very slowly chase you around the arena. If they touch you, they do a little bit of damage over time and slow you. The problem is that he summons like 50 of them, and by the end of the fight, they usually all stack up on the same spot, so if the turbo ball of Quicksilver touches you, it can actually hurt quite a bit. That said, it's really not that hard to avoid if you just keep moving around the arena while you fight. Once Yugul's dead, Sin will swoop in and unlock another minor power in your Pantheon panel, then you can head back to town. In town, talk to Hargan to get a skill point as a reward for killing Yugul, then go to the waypoint and use it to teleport back to the Lunaris Concourse. From the waypoint, run up the stairs toward the top left side of the zone, run past the unique monster that's standing in front of the big tent, and keep running toward the top left until you reach a big wall. If the door to Lunaris Temple level 1 spawned right in front of you, go up the stairs and through the door. If it wasn't directly in front of you on the top left wall, then follow that wall toward the top right, and you should run into it before too long. When you're inside the Lunaris Temple level 1, it's time to follow the magic carpet just like we did in Act 3's Lunaris Temple level 1. Run along the carpet until you reach the big auditorium, then run toward whichever direction it points, and go through the door to the second half of the zone. From there, the zone becomes a little harder to navigate, so you just have to wander around until you find a waypoint and the door to the Lunaris Temple level 2. This zone is also nearly identical to the way it was in Act 3. Go down the stairs on either side of the entrance and wander around the pathways until you find a different stairway leading up. Once you reach the top of the stairs, start wandering around this set of pathways until you find another set of stairs going up. Once you're at the top of those stairs, you're never going to believe this, but you need to wander around the next set of pathways until you find another set of stairs going up. Once you get to the top of these ones, however, the layout changes into a bunch of cages instead of the skinny walkways from before. If you have a travel skill that lets you jump, like Flame Dash or Leap Slam, you can jump through all of the cages and the wrought iron doors as you wish, but your goal is still to find yet another set of stairs. The flowery wrought iron doors are usually a sign that you're heading the right way. When you do manage to find this last, much bigger set of stairs, go through the portal at the very top to fight Dusk, the Harbinger of Lunaris. When the boss is dead, it'll drop a quest item called a Moon Orb. Once you have it, run to the top left side of the arena to grab the crafting recipe, then go back to town. From there, use the waypoint to teleport to the Solaris Concourse, then go through the door to the Harbour Bridge again. This time, instead of running all the way to the other side of the zone, we're only running to the big building in the middle where the Act's final bosses are. When you get there, go through the door to the Sky Shrine and click on the statue of the sisters in the middle of the room to start the fight. The fight starts with the statues of Solaris and Lunaris coming to life and attacking each other. When they realize they're fighting you instead, one of them teleports away, and they take turns fighting you as you bring their health down to certain thresholds. Lunaris' mechanics are relatively easy to avoid after you see them once or twice. She has a big spiraling cascade of projectiles and some big areas of damage over time that she can put on the ground, but really she's the easier of the two sisters to deal with. Solaris, on the other hand, has an attack where she shoves her spear forward and lets off a fire beam, an attack where she shoves her shield forward and lets off a bigger fire beam, then a third attack where she stabs her spear into the ground, manifests another spear made out of fire, then throws it to cause this scary checkerboard pattern of fire beams. This third attack is the most troublesome out of them all because its startup looks a lot like the normal spear attack if you're not paying attention, but it does way more damage and it's much more difficult to dodge. So while Solaris is on the field, pay very close attention to her animations, and if you see her stab her spear into the ground, the best way to avoid the checkerboard spear is to get behind her. Once she starts the animation, she does not track your character in any way, so if you get behind her, you're totally safe. After you get the hang of dodging that attack in particular, the fight becomes pretty trivial. When both bosses are dead, Sin will swoop in again, and this time unlock 2 major powers in your Pantheon panel. After he's done with that, go through one of the doors in the top left wall of the arena, then click on the door to the Blood Aqueduct to enter Act 9. That's the entire act, and those are the paths that I take. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments or in my chat while I'm live both here and on Twitch. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more like it. If you want to see similar guides for the rest of the acts, I'll put a playlist of all of them in the description and the pinned comment down below. Lastly, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.